Welcome to the Property Hammer, the no fluff, all value podcast for Aussie property investors looking for the latest insights into the property market. Today on episode 1, we got Dan Sofo, director of the Unicorn Buyers Agent. Dan's helped more than 200 clients secure over $500 million worth of property, specializing in the Sydney market, especially the eastern suburbs and inner west and lower North Shore. He's known for his hands-on approach, inspecting homes himself, moving fast, and finding deals that other people miss. Dan, welcome to the Property Hammer.
Thanks, Wilson. Yeah. What a privilege to be here for your very first episode.
Thank you, man. It's good to have you here. Dan, you're on the ground. You're seeing how investors are buying. Which areas are you seeing like the most investors are looking into, and why are these areas succeeding?
I can tell you what's been running hot over the past year. I'd say that your listeners are probably aware of a lot of these areas, but we'll cover them off. And then I guess your listeners probably want to hear about what's just starting to run hot now. Yeah. So moving just through the areas where we've been active, Moreton Bay, North Brisbane, so Caboolture, Morayfield, they've had an absolutely fantastic run. They're still running hot now this year, like right at this moment. That's been just driven by the extreme value that you can find there, like a house, a good brick house on a block of land for less than $700,000. Wow. Yeah, Gold Coast area, Narang, Mermaid Beach have been doing really, really well, and they're continuing to perform really strongly. In Sydney, Sydney's back in vogue now. It has been in the doldrums for a couple of years, along with many other parts of Australia, but investors are definitely coming back. And I'm seeing areas from the inner west all the way through Bankstown through to Liverpool. There are some areas there that are really performing really well across multiple price points. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. And then the areas on everyone's lips right now are in Victoria and Melbourne. And
that's everyone's talking about. Every investor I'm talking to is talking about Melbourne. So
everyone's talking about Melbourne, yeah. So where we've started buying in the past 6 months, Brimbank LGA over in the west. So that's 20k west of the CBD. And the suburbs we've been buying there have been Deer Park, Derrimut, Sunshine West, and St Albans. Frankston, everyone's talking about Frankston. It's probably getting a bit toppy right now for us, but Frankston, which is 45k to the southeast of the CBD, has done very well. We've been buying recently just to the east of Frankston in a place called Carrum Downs, which we're really loving. And then Bendigo.
What's the price range for all these areas?
Good question. So in both of these areas in Melbourne, both to the west and to the southeast, you can get a good solid brick home on 600 square metres of land with good frontage for between $600,000 and $800,000.
Wow, that sounds like an absolute bargain. Compared to the Sydney, it's way cheaper.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Sydney, of course, the prices in Sydney are a very different proposition. Normally, our Sydney investors, we're working with buyers between $1.1 and $1.6 million would be a typical investor buyer for us up here. So, yeah, Melbourne looks like great value, especially if you're a first-time investor or you're a younger investor. Melbourne's just looking like great value at the moment.
And out of those areas, so you mentioned Deer Park, and then you also mentioned Frankston. What type of investor should lean to each area?
Look, I can't say that we'd prefer one over the other. I think a lot comes down to what sort of budget we're working with. So if you're still a buyer in the mid to high 600s, we're looking in Deer Park, Derrimut. If you're more into the 700s, coming a little bit further into St Albans or Sunshine. If you're into the 800s, we're probably now looking over in Carrum Downs. Yeah, so it does come down to budget. And then if you're in the 500s to 600s, we've been buying in a few suburbs in Bendigo.
Okay.
Yeah.
More regional, yeah.
Bendigo for, sort of mid 500s to 600, you can still get a great brick home on a really decent parcel of land in a good suburb.
What do you think is driving this demand? Remember a few years ago, Melbourne, no one wanted to invest in Melbourne. Don't invest in Melbourne. And now everyone just wants to go to Melbourne.
Yeah, I think the problem was Melbourne got such a big kick in the guts during the pandemic. They had the worst lockdowns, I think, from anyone in the world. And that really destroyed Melbourne's economy. It destroyed Melbourne's confidence. It kind of really put them in a pretty bad place, and it's taken this long for them to recover from that. And of course, property prices stagnated throughout that period. And now, because they have just gone backwards or stayed stationary for so long, now there's so many areas in Melbourne that just look like great value.
That's for someone, let's say, under 800. Melbourne is perfect. What if someone's got a budget between 700 to 1.6 million? What kind of areas do you reckon these type of investors, a little bit more money, which they look at investing?
If you're well into the ones, look, I'm a Sydney sider. We're very strong in Sydney. We know Sydney very, very well, and we're really seeing a lot of pockets of Sydney. Talking by LGA, let's say from inner west.
Yep.
And as a point of reference for those non-Sydney siders, let's say from around the Marrickville area, heading down into Bayside. So Bayside's kind of like, think about Arncliffe, Rockdale, down into Cogra, Brighton, Sands, and down to Sans Souci. And then also running into Bankstown. So if you're following where they're putting that metro line in. So thinking basically anywhere from Helston Park all the way up to Bankstown is looking really attractive. And then into southwest Sydney as well, so Liverpool. And what I like about a lot of those kind of, let's call them middle ring suburbs, so getting away from the inner west. Once we're hitting into those middle ring suburbs, you're looking at really good parcels of land that are looking attractive to both now and into the future for developers. So subdividable land.
Yeah.
So if you've got sort of like that 1.3, 1.4 to 1.6, you could buy something in Revesby, Padstow, Panania, all the way through to, let's think about places like Horningsea Park, Hoxton Park, West Hoxton. You can get a great block of land, 600 square metres with a great frontage that is future subdividable, and still get a reasonable rental yield on it now. So, if you want something that's going to do well for you and also have that future spice of, well, maybe I develop it myself or maybe I sell it to a little builder to develop it, these areas are looking really attractive.
Okay, perfect. You see a lot of investors chase these hotspots, hotspots everywhere. What do you see as like the biggest mistake going for that type of strategy, especially if you're chasing like the wrong areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just buying in a hotspot because it's a hotspot, it's kind of like just chasing a trend. And quite often maybe there's not enough thought has gone into the long-term viability of the area. So, they say begin with the end in mind, right?
Yeah.
Like when you buy property, it's time that does the heavy lifting really. And you really want to go into a place where you feel like it's not just going to run hot now, but it's going to have long-term, consistent, sustainable growth.
Okay.
So will a hotspot do that for you? Maybe sometimes it will. If you can go back and look at 20 years of data, you can just see that nice, it's just ticking up that kind of 4, 5, 6, 7% every year. And you can see there's great infrastructure and amenity and gentrification coming in. If it's a hotspot and it has those things as well, that's fine. But if it's hard to see that, maybe it is just a hotspot and maybe it's here today, gone tomorrow. And I will give an example, and I'm apologising to all of your viewers who absolutely love Perth.
Yeah.
Okay, look, Perth's had a great run. I'm a bit long in the tooth. I was around when Perth had its last great run, which was in 2006, when Perth had its last big mining boom. So 2006, property prices in Perth went up 45% in 1 year.
Crazy.
45% in 1 year.
It's insane.
Everyone piled in. I almost bought in Perth back in 2006 as well. And for some reason, I just thought I remember thinking back then, this feels like a bit of a fad, and I didn't do it. And I was kind of glad I did, because then prices did not move for 17 years. So you made 45% in 1 year if you bought at the right time. And then they did nothing for 17 years.
That's a huge opportunity cost there.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. And even if you thought, okay, it's in the doldrums, I'll hold on for 2, 3, 4, 5, even if you held for 4, 5, 6, 7 years before you offloaded, you've still done okay. But if you've got a long-term horizon, which any good property investor should have a long-term horizon, then you would have been burnt. Yeah. And now it's come back. Prices just look so cheap relative. Back in 2023, we've seen it do really, really well as well. But are we going to see a repeat of that? Was it just a fad? Yeah. Definitely. Well, what do you think?
Look, I think people make the argument back in that time it was just mainly mining, and they said that Perth's economy is kind of diversified to a certain degree. Would you sort of agree with that? It's more diverse than, before it was more of a one-trick pony. Now it's a little bit more diverse with the economy. Yeah,
I think that is a good argument, definitely, and maybe that is why it is different this time. There's a lot more going on in that isn't just a big mining town. And I hope that that's the case, that there is enough diversity in the economy there. I do know I hear that people want to go there and live there. And I've even actually, for the first time almost ever, I'm seeing Sydney-siders move. So that's a big green flag, right? When you've got Sydney-siders going, I'm out, I can't handle the cost here anymore, I'm going to go live in the West. That's like, okay, it's different. And I hear people saying the quality of the life there is absolutely amazing. I've heard it's a fantastic place to live. So maybe all of those factors mean it's different this time.
Any other hotspots besides Perth, do you reckon? What do you think of people are still investing in Townsville and that regional Queensland?
Over the past few years, we've loved the Sunshine Coast, Maroochydore to Caloundra, that whole section there on the sunny coast. fastest growing population in Australia.
Really?
Huge infrastructure. There's just so much going on there. It's like the fundamentals are fantastic. Yeah. Lifestyle factors, economic factors, affordability factors. It's all going on there. So that we've loved there, we've bought there. I think the Gold Coast is going to have a bright future for a lot of the same reasons. And also because there's such a scarcity of land in the Gold Coast area as well, in the Gold Coast region. So I think we're going to see that perform very well over 15 years. Sydney, the perennial darling. I think Melbourne's just such an underdog right now. I'm still feeling undervalued. I'm still feeling really bullish on quite a few suburbs in Melbourne. Yeah.
I think there was data suggesting Melbourne was like $300,000 or $400,000 undervalued to where it should be. It was just insane.
Yeah, it's looking like that. But if you go and check out the land values of your standard, 600 metre block in some of these suburbs we've been talking about, the land value represents sort of like more than 65 or 70% or 75% of the purchase. So again, you just do the mathematics. If the land is worth $450,000 or $480,000 and I'm buying the house for $680,000, I couldn't build a 3-bedroom house on that block of land for $250,000 to $300,000. A house minimum, and we're talking about a very basic entry-level house, is $600,000.
Yeah.
$550,000, $600,000. So that's the mathematics of it. It's just like you're buying these places for not much above land value. The value just seems to be there.
So pretty much go for something a little bit older, more land, right? Don't buy the brand new shiny house that's
definitely
builders putting their premium and it's half the land size.
Absolutely.
You're just not getting the bang for buck.
Not getting land.
You've talked about the great wealth transfer. I read this in some of your articles. What is it and what does it matter for property investors?
Cool, yeah. The great wealth transfer it's a well-documented, I guess, phenomenon on the horizon now. And economists are predicting that the baby boomers are going to be transferring about $5.5 trillion of worth of their wealth to the next generations. So that's to their kids and to their grandkids.
Wow.
So what does it mean for investors or property buyers or for all of us basically is, I think there are three things. We're going to think about how much money this actually is. Let's put this into context. $5.5 trillion over 20 years is $270 billion a year of free money being handed down from one generation to the younger generations. To put that into context, and I think you would probably know this as a broker, I think the total value of all loans written in Australia in a year is about $350 billion.
Yeah.
So this is almost that much again in free money. It's crazy. It's like a liquidity event. It's like all this free money just washing over us. That's the first thing, the weight of how much money there is. The second is the distribution. How is this money being distributed? In simple terms, the richer your parents are, the more you get. The less money your parents have, the less you get. So what it will mean is that the wealthy will get wealthier and the less wealthy will get less wealthy or remain less wealthy. And I think that's going to have a really big impact on the property landscape, what people are buying and where they're buying.
Do you think that impact more affluent areas and more expensive areas will become even more expensive? Or do you think the less affluent areas,
It's a good question. And maybe you can answer this because let me ask you a question. Have you been seeing the great wealth transfer? Have you been seeing the bank of mum and dad stepping up?
You know what's crazy? Every client I've seen, if they're a first home buyer looking to enter the Sydney market, I say 80% of them have a huge assistance from the parents. So either parents are giving them $500,000 or $1 million or giving their property onto the market.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any real investor in Sydney be able to buy just with their own
money,
without any help.
So 8 or 9 out of 10 of your clients would be accessing that kind of, and we're not talking about 50 grand here. We're talking about
$500,000, $1 million. We had one client, they were giving him about $4 million for him to buy a $7 million property.
Yeah.
That's how insane the wealth transfer.
Yeah.
And the clients that don't have this money, they're more likely to buy the fringes or interstate because they just cannot afford to
buy here. So, we're talking about ridiculous sums of money here, right? Like for someone to get, and I'm seeing the same thing with my buyers where, 6, 7, 8 years ago, $50,000 or $100,000 would be a big
Huge.
hand-me-down.
Yeah.
And now it is, I'm seeing $500,000 more, even more than that. In terms of like how it's affecting, definitely the inner suburbs, that's where the ones that are getting more of a hand-me-down are buying. And I suspect that's not just because that's where they see value, but for other reasons like mum and dad want to keep their kids and their grandkids close.
So these like areas like Morayfield, is it like, what is it, Petersham or what areas?
I'm seeing it, look, for my buyers, I'm seeing lots on the North Shore.
Okay.
I'm seeing lots in the eastern suburbs, all around the harbour, anywhere on the eastern beaches, definitely. But the things that I'm seeing that are driving it, and it's almost like, the more hand-me-down, the greater the wealth transfer is sort of attached to, well, we want to keep our family close. We want to help you be near good schools. They're kind of like the things that are really driving, I guess how much bank of mum and dad the boomers are passing on.
Yeah. And for investors that don't have the bank of mum and dad, do you think that there's still opportunity for them to get it? Because that's the most common thing I hear a lot of investors say, I don't have a rich parents, I can't afford property.
You can buy great property in a really good area for $500,000. Just because you don't have bank of mum and dad, it shouldn't be an obstacle to invest. I think you invest where you can with what you can. And if you've got more, well, a bigger snowball gathers more snow. But everyone is on their own investing journey, their own purchasing journey. So you just you do your research to buy in the best location that you can with the money that you've got.
Yeah.
You can only do what you can do, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Dan, you hear a lot of people talking about, the government's pushing density. What do you think that actually means in reality? What density changes, that reforms that the government's pushing?
This is like a pet topic of mine, so I'm glad you asked. Here's the pyramid of development in Australia. We realise that supply is not keeping up with demand.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, the Labor government set the National Housing Accord. They said, we want to build 1.2 million new homes across Australia by 2030.
Okay.
So then the states came out with their own policies to build enough homes. In New South Wales, we came up with basically our state planning policy came up with two sub-policies to drive growth.
Yeah.
One is called the transport-oriented development, which is about increasing density around train stations within 400 metres. And they also come up with the low to mid-rise housing policy, which is increasing development within village centres up to 800 metres.
Yeah.
That's in New South Wales. Victoria came up with their own. They come up with Plan for Victoria, which is a similar version. Basically, it's a very similar version. And what these mean is that these state planning policies, they override local council policies.
Wow.
So if you meet in these areas where the state's kind of gone, this is where we're putting more houses, this is where we're putting more apartments, this is where we want to go higher, and this is generally around train stations, metro stations and village centres, you don't need to go through local council anymore. You can basically say, this meets the state standard. Yeah. We can get a DA passed via a complying development and we get rubber stamped.
Okay, so fast tracked. Yeah.
Basically like assume it's approved.
Yeah.
So what's happening is now it's like a mini gold rush. This mini gold rush, everyone's like, great, there's going to be development, there's going to be density. And it's really changed the landscape of, well, in particular of Melbourne and in New South Wales. And interestingly, we're actually seeing, in a way, the state kind of hijacking development.
Yeah.
They're overriding, they're coming out of the local council and they're saying, we're going to put high rises here, we're going to put mid-rise here, we're going to do this here, we're going to do that there. And local governments, you've got no say about it. Yes.
That's crazy.
And in terms of how we're going to see our suburbs and our cities evolve, this is the biggest, I guess it's the biggest needle mover I've seen certainly since I've been investing and in the property world, like for decades. And I think it's really going to be shaping the way our suburbs grow and the way our suburbs develop. And it's something that everyone should be thinking about because no one's really sure how it's going to play out. But if you're buying property, you really need to be across this and you need to be following it closely.
That's just mean if you're a property investor with these changes to density, right? Wouldn't that mean this could be a window where if you buy in these areas, it could be a huge opportunity in the future where maybe a developer comes to you and says, hey, I want to take your home and your neighbor's home and give you a big payout because I want to build a huge sky-high building on that.
Yes. Yeah, it could be. It could be. But it also could go the other way. So, for example, you might buy a great little house and then in 5 years' time, you've got a 3 stories of apartments behind you looking into your backyard.
Yeah.
And now your property's devalued. Or maybe you buy into a suburb where you saw this nice leafy green street with lots of nice heritage houses on it, and you thought, I'm going to buy a property here and it's going to remain like this forever and stay nice and people will always want to live here. And then everything gets knocked down and there's a bunch of ugly duplexes and a big apartment block on the corner, and all of a sudden that nice amenity that you had in your suburb, it's gone. So you kind of got to be, it could be a double-edged sword, right, Wilson?
Yeah.
It could be like, maybe you can benefit from it financially, or maybe it's overdevelopment and too much density, and then all of a sudden your place is, the suburb didn't end up the way you thought it would.
I hear climate change. I've never heard anyone really talk about climate change regarding property. What's your take on it? Because I've read a few articles, you mentioned this a lot.
Yes, climate change is, I think it's something that no one talks about, that not enough people are talking about, but it should be on everyone's radar.
Okay.
Because, and I know why it's not being talked about, we'll get to that in a second, but climate change is making a lot of properties either uninsurable or uninhabitable. This is a thing now, okay? We're talking about increased flood events, increased storm events. There have been studies done which theorise that within the next 20 years, 8% of all properties, residential properties in Australia currently, will either be uninsurable or uninhabitable.
Jeez, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And it's to the point now where, you know, we say to clients, if you are looking at buying a house and it's in a flood zone, even if it's in a 1 AXP, like a 1 in 100 year flood event, you've got to assume that either something can happen or there's going to be a point in the lifetime that you hold this property that the insurance premiums will get to a point where they'll be uncomfortable.
Unsustainable to hold it, right?
And then not a viable option to hold. Now, we've had people come to us as well, and their insurance policies have gone up from like $600-700 a year 10 years ago, crept up to $2,000-3,000 a year, and then last year they got whacked with $13,000.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Because in terms of the cash flow, that's a huge hole in your wallet.
It's a huge hole, and it's a huge hole if you're an investor, and it's also a huge hole if you're a homeowner.
Yeah.
And this particular case that I'm just saying right now, this is an older lady who was she had retired, so she's on retirement income now, and she's like, Dan, like, why have I gone from this to this?
Wow.
And it's because, well, you just happen to be in a very high risk area. Now, the reason, Wilson, that we aren't hearing about this as much as we should is the two industries that should be talking about it, banking and insurance, are also the two industries that are most affected by high-risk suburbs. So imagine if the banks and insurers come out and go, guys, just letting you know we have a problem here. The banks and the insurers are all holding these assets. So it's not in their interest to be raising the flag. What they're doing, I call it the silent exit, right? They're just quietly increasing the premiums, or just sending you a little note saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Homeowner, Mr. Investor, we're no longer insuring your house, or it's now going to be $5,000 a year to insure. It's happening on the quiet.
Yeah. Because if they did come out and have this big warning, now these assets are worthless, just like the Mascot Towers. Now they're all worthless.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's absolutely right. So I think that's why we aren't, I know that's why we aren't hearing about it, why it's not on everyone's lips. But there are enough independent studies, so non-banking, non-insurance related businesses doing these studies who are saying, guys, you need to be thinking about this. It's going to be a problem.
And is there a particular area? Are we talking about Townsville, or are we talking about any particular area you say this could be a real problem in the future?
A lot of Brisbane.
A lot of Brisbane.
I mean, Ipswich is built on a floodplain.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Eastern suburbs of Sydney, Double Bay's built on a swamp.
I did not know. That's crazy.
Just go and Google it. Go and find pictures of when Double Bay was this far underwater. Yeah. Look at the Hawkesbury.
Yeah.
Look at the Hawkesbury. Anywhere on the Hawkesbury River. There are whole tracks in the northwest as well, or anywhere following the Hawkesbury River, where like a lot of these places are going to be, if they aren't already, uninsurable. So that's a big one. That's flood. Fire. I mean, fire is more applicable to, well, also in Sydney. I mean, if you look at Sydney on a map, we're surrounded by national parks. Look at the Blue Mountains. You know, we've had enough fire incidents in the Blue Mountains, and if you look at how much bushland or national parkland we have around us, we all should all be thinking about this.
Yeah.
We should all be thinking about it.
Hey, next, Dan, if someone wants to start investing in property, what's the simple, most effective way for them to start?
Okay. Well, Wilson, I'm probably going to be a bit controversial here. Look, I know there's a typical model. I know that you work with a lot of investors and you've probably seen this very typical standard model of work out what do you want to retire on,
How much passive income you want to make? Yeah.
how much passive income you want to make, work out what total asset base you need to have that at a 4 or 5% return, build up those properties over however many years it takes you, and then sell one or two down so that you
Pay everything out.
pay everything out. Have you seen?
That's the most common. You buy 6, you sell 3. Now you got 3. You're making almost about 100 grand.
Yeah.
And you've got no debt, and you live happily
Happily ever after.
well. Yeah.
Correct. So you know it. I mean, it seems to be what everyone, if you go to I guess like any kind of investor
Convention
focus,
or
that's what you're
webinar.
gonna that's what you're gonna hear,
Yeah.
right? And your clients.
In reality, it's a lot harder to do than.
It is, and it's not even about how hard it is, but I think when you're young and you have this vision of everything looks good on paper and you model it out and there's, you pump it all into the spreadsheet and it all looks beautiful, but life doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And when you're double income, no kids, and you haven't had kids yet, and I know you've got a little 14-month at home, like how much does your life change?
Huge, because now your missus not working, and then now you have to be a lot more conservative with the budget because you just lose a huge portion of your income.
Yep, totally. So all these life events, you have a child, or I got 3 kids, and then maybe you get a redundancy, or maybe you get sick, or your partner gets sick,
or you get divorced, like 50% divorce.
That's it. There's all these life events, and it's all well and good to have this kind of plan. You should definitely begin with the end in mind. But you just don't know how it's going to roll out. So I would say there's no one strategy that works. When it comes to buying property, you buy when you can.
Yeah.
You buy when you can. If you feel comfortable, if you've got a little nest egg, whether that's something you've built yourself or you can access the bank of mum and dad, buy the best quality asset now that you can, and that is going to be comfortable for you to hold, and then just add if and when you can. I'm seeing variations on the traditional model as well, because life for people isn't as stable as it was for, like, say, our parents. Like, you don't go get a job and work in that for 30 years and stay in one place. Like, young professionals, what do? Our clients,
job swatching every few years.
Totally.
No loyalty.
Jumping around. They've got they got side hustles going. They've got their contractors. They go and work in Hong Kong, Singapore, UK for years. So their investing strategy is a lot more fragmented than this kind of traditional model. And actually a really big request that we're seeing from our investors right now is, Dan, we want to buy a place that we can live in now, but we're going to go away overseas and work. We've got contract roles. It'll convert to investment. But then it could also be a home when we come back. And also, we don't want to traditionally rent it out because we want it to be available for when we come back. So we want to be an Airbnb type model. So we're seeing like that typical kind of model that everyone used to, or maybe they still do, kind of pushing. I think it's a bit broken. I don't think it's relevant.
Yeah, interesting. So if someone does want to replace their income for property, do you think there's a specific way the best way to go about this?
Honestly, out of all of our clients, and including myself with my wife and with our investing strategy, I've never seen anyone get to the point where they actually replace their income because they don't want to replace their income. They want to supplement their income, but then they realize that the end goal isn't to actually really be realizing cash. Also, we're not working with 60-year-old investors. We tend to work with 20, 30 and 40-year-old investors. What we see with our long-term clients is their goals change. So maybe the first one we bought from them went, well, Dan, we want to buy 3 or 4. And that's what we're doing back in, 2016, 2017, 2018. We want to buy 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. But then they kind of they start having kids. And then other things come up and they've accumulated a few. And now it's more like, well, we just want to have one each for our kids. Or we want to get to a point where we can sell one of them to release some equity to pay another one down because mum's looking after kids at home. Another one's going to private school and they just need to kind of, release some funds. Kind of like what I was saying before, the theory of me telling you what the perfect strategy is and the reality of how that rolls out for my clients is very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would just say accumulate, buy the best quality assets that you can, keep them cash flow neutral if you can, so you can keep accumulating and they're not too stressful for you. Cash flow neutral after your tax add backs.
Yeah.
And then, hold on for as long as you can, accumulate for as long as you can, but then life's going to get in the way. You're going to have kids, you're going to have private school fees, you're going to have medical bills, sick parents, death, divorce, all those sorts of things. You don't know.
Never know. Do you see any of your clients, do they ever buy trusts, or you see that used as a vehicle for them to sort of build more property?
Our older clients, established clients that have a family, will accumulate in a trust.
Yeah.
We also have SMSF clients. So they need to have their trustee for their superannuation fund. And then for each property they buy, they need to set up a bare trust for each of those. For younger buyers, we've helped friends buy.
Yeah.
And they have bought as tenants-in-common with a partnership split noted on the contract. And then they've got a separate agreement. So they're not buying a trust or anything fancy. It's literally just the separate agreement is witnessed by a JP, and they've just got that agreement of how they will exit the partnership, I guess. And just ratifying what their ownership split is on the contract. So we've done that, and we've also heard of other people doing that as well. So that's becoming more common for friends that want to buy together. So there's no one right answer. Yeah. If you're young, you're not married yet, you don't have kids, do you need to waste money setting up a trust? Probably not. If you're looking like being a high net worth individual, you can get it started sooner rather than later. Yeah. We do have clients in their late 20s who have already set up family trust.
We've got a lot of clients buying trusts, especially if they want to have more than 5, 6, 7 properties, just because it allows them a way for them to sort of preserve their buying capacity. So because that's the number one problem that a lot of these investors have is they get capped out on the third or fourth property because the banks are so strict with the rules and stuff. So interesting. Okay, so you're saying anyone that's aggressively accumulating, even if they're young, they're setting up their trust first? We've seen one of the clients we work with. So he's about 35 years old. He's got 5 properties, 4 of them, all investments under the trust, and then one is PPR under his personal name just so that he doesn't pay the CGT.
Capital gains.
Yeah. So, and then he's able to buy multiple more properties because the banks, if you buy under trust and then if it's self-sufficient, banks will ignore that income and the debt. So it just pretty much allows you to recycle your buying power. So
interesting. Yeah. That's a good strategy.
Yeah. It's a very good strategy. But it's only for people that have good income, want to have 5, 10 properties, because if you don't have good income, then it can be a house for cars if the interest rates go up and then or if the premiums go up or if something goes wrong, you divorce or your wife doesn't work anymore, then it can collapse on you pretty much. It's a high risk, high reward.
Yeah. Actually, that is one other thing we've seen with family trusts. We've had clients who had bought property within a trust, and then they got divorced. But they decided to keep the assets, and because the assets were in the trust, within the trust, they just left those assets within the trust, and the kids were the beneficiaries as well. So I guess that's another benefit of having a trust. Yeah, very good. Very good.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Dan. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, Wilson. Cheers, man.